Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's week 13, and this week we'll be talking about modernism and postmodernism. Let's begin. Okay, so modernism refers to a global philosophical and arts movement in society and culture that started in the early 20th century, which is 1900, in the US and Europe, that sought new values of modern industrial life. So this thing we call modernism, it's a worldwide movement in the philosophy and field of arts. And it's not just like a movement in the arts, but also it was a societal change. And industrialism, the new industrial era that started in the late 19th century, that triggered the advent of modernism. And it reflected a new desire to create new forms of art, philosophy, and social organization, mostly because, well, a lot of new things were invented, and mass production became a thing. Now, factories were made where machines mass produced objects, merchandise, and all this assembly line developments. It created inventions that allowed us to explore these new ideas. Okay, and then modernist innovations include abstraction, montage cinema, atonal music, chromoluminarism, and modern architecture. We're going to look at chromoluminarism later. Some some modern artists utilized chromoluminarism rather well, and we'll look at some examples of that. And it employed reprise, appropriation, and parody to make use of works from the past. So you're going to see a lot of, well, not a lot, but maybe some appropriation from things from past movements as well. And modernism is a reaction to Romanticism and its revolt against the effects of industrialism. So remember how I said in one of the earlier lectures that every movement is a reaction to the movement that came before it, right? Well, modernism is a reaction to Romanticism, and Romanticism was a revolt against industrialism. So modernism, in a way, is in support of industrialism. Well, because industrialism is something that the world can't get away from. It was just a worldwide phenomenon at that time, and many things were being fabricated and also invented, and Romanticism was revolting against that, and modernism was in a way embracing industrialism. So examples of movements within modernism are Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Expressionism, Fauvism, Cubism, and Futurism. So let's take a look at these. Okay, so this is going to be a long lecture, so it's going to be divided into multiple parts, and you'll have a couple weeks to watch this and look over the slides. There's a lot to know, and it's very important for you to know the artist name and the title of the pieces, and also the movement from which the pieces are from. Movement being stuff like Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, the artistic movement or in layman's terms, you can just call it style, right? These movements are very important, and they all have their individual styles and visual styles and thematic elements behind them. So it's important to know all of these. So the first movement that we're going to look at is Impressionism. Impressionism started around 1865, and it has a very concrete starting date because of one of the pieces that Monet painted, and it was actually called Impression Sunrise, and that's why it's called Impressionism. It's actually named after the piece that Monet did, which we're going to take a look at. So Impressionism is characterized by short visible brushstrokes, accurate depiction of light and ordinary subject matter. And it started in France, started in Paris, and it's a violation of painting rules at that time. And a lot of people were against it. Like, a lot of people looked at the first Impressionist paintings and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. They thought it was garbage, but well, lo and behold, it made a huge impact even to this day. And it portrayed overall visual effects rather than details, and maybe that's what people were really appalled at. They didn't understand why people were painting with such low detail and with such a lack of technical finesse, but it was trying to capture the lighting. So, like detail, the level of detail that we've seen in realism, it's gone. So important artists from the Impressionist movement are Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Edward Manet, and Edgar Degas. And you don't have to know their full names, you just need to know their last names. Makes it a little easier for you to memorize these. Okay, so let's take a look. So this is a piece by Claude Monet. It's entitled Impression Sunrise. And this is where the movement name Impressionism comes from. This is the first piece in the Impressionist movement. So Monet, he just painted this, and he titled it Impression Sunrise. And then they started calling all the pieces in the show this piece was a part of Impressionist paintings. And that's how Impressionism got its name. So if you look at this piece, I mean, it's rather low detail. We saw this in the previous lecture, but it's low detail, and I mean, you can see all the brush strokes. A person who is not versed in the arts will look at this painting and will be like, it's not painted well. Well, that's not the point. That's not, like, technical aspect is not the only thing that, that are important. It's the whole painting itself, not just the details, right? So this painting captures the way light reacts in our surroundings. And as you can see, the sun is red, and you can see the reflection of the sun, which is portrayed with just brush strokes. And the sky is like a mixture of orange and purple and blue, and it's a field of color. It's a field of light, and you can really see that it captures the essence of sunrise. And that's the important point that Impressionism makes. It's the importance of capturing the essence. That's what's important. Here's a piece by Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Dance at La Moulin de la Galette. And in this piece, you can see that all the people's faces are painted. They're not painted in detail, but they're all there, and if you step back from it, you can't tell that it lacks detail. Only if you go really up close, you're going to see that it's rather roughly painted. But again, that's not the point. The details is not the point. The point is Renoir is capturing the way light reacts in this scene. So in this painting, you can see the canopy, you can see the light shining through the canopy of the trees above these people, and it's actually shining these you can see the shadow of the leaves of the trees, and it's shining these like spotlights of sunlight on their bodies, right? So this level of detail is present in the lighting and the shadows itself, and not so much the subjects. And that's exactly what Impressionism is trying to do. It's capturing light. It's the essence of light and how it reacts to its surroundings. It's important to note that these movements in modernism and postmodernism, well, in any movement throughout history, that they don't happen one after the other. There's a lot of overlap. Okay, so Impressionism was still going on when Post-Impressionism was quote unquote invented, and then later on too, like pop art and conceptual art and video art, all of that, it overlaps. It's not one after the other. So Post-Impressionism actually existed alongside Impressionism. There's a lot of overlap between them, and it's called Post-Impressionism because, well, it came after the invention of Impressionism, and it kind of like plays with the concept in Impressionism, and it turns it into its own thing. It's a post movement, so it's a reaction. It's a direct reaction to the one before it. So Post-Impressionism started in 1885, and it emerged as a reaction against Impressionists' concern for the naturalistic depiction of light and color. That means it's a lot less natural looking. It's a little bit more exaggerated. So we'll take a look at some examples of those. Broad emphasis on abstract qualities and symbolic content utilized pointillism, which is a form of chromoluminarism. So we're going to take a look at an example of pointillism. Less landscape paintings, also known as plein air. This is French, hence the spelling. And it led into Fauvism eventually. Fauvism is a very vibrant movement. Lots of exaggerated colors. We'll take a look. Okay, important artists. Vincent van Gogh. You may have heard of him. Paul Cézanne, Paul Gauguin, and George Seurat. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so this is Paul Cézanne. This piece is called Le Jeu des Cartes. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm not sure, but compared to Impressionism, what do you see? What do you see in this? So the colors are a little bit more vibrant. It's as if you kind of dialed up the saturation knob, the saturation slider on Instagram, right? It's more saturated. The colors aren't as washed out as it was in Impressionism, right? So Post-Impressionism is kind of like Impressionism on steroids. So this is a piece by Paul Cézanne. And then we get Georges Seurat, A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte. So these titles, these titles are translated titles. They're not the actual French titles. The actual title is in French, and this is the English title, the English translated title. You don't have to know the French title for it. As long as you know the English title, it's fine. Okay, so this is an example of chromoluminarism. So what's going on here? If you look at this painting closely, you'll see that, especially down here, you can really see that this entire painting is painted with just dots. This is an example of pointillism, where the artist, using tiny, tiny points or dots, they create this like pixelated effect on a canvas. So it's sort of an early example of like digital pixelation. You can actually achieve this kind of style in Photoshop. If you've ever used Photoshop, you can apply filters onto your image and make a pointillist style image, right? Like it looks like a painting. Well, this one is done by hand, and it's a painting. And so this is an example of chromoluminarism, and pointillism is one of the styles in chromoluminarism. Okay, so this is by George Seurat. Okay, let's look at Fauvism. Fauvism started around 1900, and the works emphasized painterly qualities and strong color over the realistic values retained by Impressionism. So we're going to see some Fauvist pieces, and they are very painterly. Painterly meaning you can see the brush strokes, you can see that it's actually painted by a person and not so much, it doesn't look like it was manufactured. You can see all the rough brush strokes in the paintings, and the colors are strong. The colors are very, very saturated. Lots of abstraction of color. The figures themselves aren't so much abstracted, but the color is very, very abstract. High saturation, wild brushwork, and strident colors. In fact, Fauvism, the word fauve, means wild. Okay, so you get wild brushwork and strident colors. Subject matter underwent simplification and abstraction. So in Fauvism, the important artists are Henri Matisse and André Derain. So here's a piece by Henri Matisse, La Danse. You may have seen this work before. It is a very famous piece. And if you take a look, it's painted rather crudely. You know, like you can see all the brushstrokes, and there's no shading whatsoever. You can't see any shadows on these figures. Okay, maybe like right here, but like that's it. You don't see any shadows here. It kind of looks like it's painted by a child, but you know, that's not the point here. The point is it shows exaggerated colors and wild brushwork. Okay, so those are the defining characteristics of Fauvism. Here's another one. This piece is by André Derain. Okay, this piece is called Charing Cross Bridge, London. I hope I pronounced this correctly. I think that's how it's pronounced. But here, I mean, we saw this piece in the last lecture, but again, lots of very exaggerated reds in the sky and very exaggerated blues, and I think this is the reflection of the sunlight in the water. Very exaggerated. It's like saturation turned up to like 11, and details are missing. Very, very, very wild, you know, very crude and quick brushstrokes. It's very stylized.